good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in North America. Today, we're going to be talking to you about how to transform how you communicate in student transportation with BusPlanner. Today, we've got people who currently use BusPlanner in both Canada and the United States, and we also have others out there that in the people transportation industry that want to just learn more about this. So it's again our pleasure to have everyone here from wherever you are. Joining me today is a colleague of mine and an old friend, Mr. Scott Denton. He is no stranger to K-12 transportation. He recently retired after 30 years of leading various leadership positions within school districts around North Carolina. He was transportation director, operations manager. He was assistant superintendent of operations. And he's now part of the bus planner team as a solutions consultant. I myself, Binford, Sloan, am also no stranger to transportation, serving over 24 years as transportation director in districts across North Carolina and Virginia, and most recently have been with Bus Planner for over 5.5 years as a strategic account executive. So, Scott, it's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk through this. And so, for everyone on the call, we've kind of broken this out for you, what we want to go cover today. So we want to talk about common communication challenges that everyone is facing, again, across North America in student transportation. What we see is solutions for tackling some of those communication challenges that are out there. How you manage stakeholders through communication to give your service delivery operation positive results. How Bus Planner can help you with these communication processes. And then what we see is the importance of, again, having the telematics and the GPS integration and how that can lead to better communication. So Scott, having been around for a long time in this, we've seen a lot, right? And so, there's a lot of issues out there facing pupil transportation organizations today. I mean, what do you see as some of the top ones that the out there people are working with, and some of those challenges and how they, it affects their stakeholder communication?
Well, thanks, Ben, for having me on. I do appreciate the opportunity to share information with people. That's part of when you're in transportation, it's in your blood, and it's a lot of people that retire pick up other things to do when they retire and stay involved in the industry. And I'm an example of one of those people who just couldn't stay away. So I think the thing that obviously pops out at people is the bus driver shortage.
Hmm.
The bus driver shortage really didn't just start with the pandemic. It started well before that, and pretty much, I mean, I think districts that have a they have folks that are in the schools working. They have custodial staff. They have teacher assistants. They have cafeteria staff. Those folks have tended to fare just a little bit better, maybe, on a bus driver shortage platform than maybe some of the larger districts who have converted a lot of those jobs to full time. I remember back when I first started working in transportation, I was 16 years old. Drove a school bus, parked it in my yard at home, drove it to school, parked it in the bus parking lot, and then drove it back home. There may be some rural places that still do some of that. They allow their drivers to park at home. I think more commonly, things have changed so much that jobs have become full time, and that was one of the things I think maybe districts tried to help solve the issue of administration having to spend so much time on buses. So we as transportation will take that from you, and we'll make these jobs full time. We'll offer benefits to people, and that was a good idea, sort of, because I think that's probably what's contributed some to the bus driver shortage over time. Along with that came the platform of adding multiple tiers to and changing your bell times. And even most recently, I know we had to do this for my last stop in Union County, North Carolina. We had to have a lot of double runs because we just simply didn't have enough drivers, particularly if you're in locations where those folks are in demand. If you have construction
Mhm.
going on in your community, and those folks could go out and drive a dump truck, we lost a lot of people to that. We lost a lot of people to COVID, a lot of older people, a lot of folks that had their parents living with them. They didn't want to come back to work. They were afraid at that time that they would lose their parents, or they would transmit the virus to their families, and so they chose not to come back to work. And so this thing's been building a long time, and I think although we may be slightly better now than what we were, it's still a significant challenge for a lot of districts to manage that. And then of course what happens from that is the communication challenges that result from the shortages. You know,
Mhm.
I've can remember when I was working many years ago, we'd look outside to see if all the buses were still there in the parking lot. We didn't have an electronic way to monitor where the buses were leaving or were had been started, or whether they were on their route or not. We need to get a route to a driver. We would either fax a copy to the school. We generated there in transportation and faxed a copy to the school, or we would walk out to the bus lot if we had buses parked at that location and put it in the seat for the driver for the afternoon, because it was different than maybe what that route was in the morning. A lot of the tools we have now, Binford, are streamlined such that you don't have to do that. I think the phones have made a difference. The people having cell phones and the ability to use smartphones have
Mhm.
certainly made a difference, both from a driver perspective, from a parent perspective. So a lot of things have changed in the way transportation operates, and I think those changes can be used favorably to address the bus driver shortage. Um,
Yeah. I mean, for me, thinking about what you're talking through, and I do remember, and over the years, we would always hover around, as low as 2, 3% driver vacancies. Maybe it would get up to 10 or 12, right? But never to the levels of what we've seen since the pandemic, right? I mean, districts out there now, 20%, 30+% driver vacancies. And we're not even talking about the people who are out on sick leave or wanting to just take a day
yeah,
off for vacation, right? I mean, we're just talking about sheer vacancies. And then you go from that traditional, 5 day a week transportation. And this is one of the things that the industry was honestly caught flat-footed when COVID, because we weren't geared for the unique transportation scheduling instances as we're seeing now, where students were going abbreviated schedules. They were going different days of the week, or they would have multiple pickup drop
absolutely.
off location. I mean, and now it's become, I like to refer to it as we've gone more to a UPS FedEx model, right, where it changes every single day and it's not consistent. And so it has been a lot, and I think something else too that's been playing a role. You were talking about, people wanting more wages, right? And so, districts have been relying on, COVID funding for the most part that has just recently expired.
It has.
So we're getting ready to go again into a new chapter in this ever, evolving matrix that we see out there.
No, I think
What do you
Denver
see?
too, something that
Yeah.
complicates the communication, from the bus driver shortage. You always do still have the call outs. You got the
Right.
daily challenges that
Right.
compound the problems that many people deal with every single day. I
Mhm.
can remember hiring a new person when I was an assistant superintendent, and that person was in risk management. And I
Mhm.
took the person over to transportation one morning just to introduce him to the way transportation operated. And he made the comment to me once we once we got through that visit, I couldn't do this job. I mean, it's a literal shell game every day for a lot of these districts. They're having to make changes on the fly every single morning, and that challenge that's something that our transportation folks really are taking for granted, that they can make that work every day. A lot of the tools that we have for Bus Planner can make that job so much easier, and I'm excited for you to talk about those today.
They can. They can. So everyone in our audience today, we'd like to take a poll for a few, just for a few seconds here, and hear from you. tell us what you see are the biggest communication issue or issues that that your school district is facing. I mean, tell us what you're seeing out there. We'll pause here for about 15, 20 seconds while everyone fills that out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close that poll right now, and we saw the results is what we thought it was going to be. That by far that the driver shortage is what everyone is dealing with the most right now. It has exasperated a lot of their operations. So thanks to all of you that took the time to answer that question for us. So Scott, you know, what do you see as some ways maybe to, people on the call here, remember how we used to do it, right? And what do you see as some strategies that we could offer to help with addressing some of these communication issues that are facing student transportation today?
Well, Binford, I'll go back to something that and you know me for a long time. You know me for a long time, and one of the things I've always really placed a focus on is process
Mm-hmm.
and documenting the process of how you do things. And I think student data quality. We talk about communication. Well, how does student data quality really play into communication? Well, it's the very foundation for the information you're going to give out to your schools and to your parents. And so, do you have a sound process established to allow you to get information from the school? Is that information updated? What have you done to communicate with your senior management team to gain
Mm-hmm.
their buy-in to what your process looks like? And then, do you have a regular communication channel set up with your principals? That's critically important, and that's before you even get to sending information out about what student the bus, what student the which student rides a bus, or tracking a bus, or providing information on schools about the status of buses. All that information is based on, and I know people already know this, but I think sometimes we don't do a good enough job up front of really defining what that process looks like, and then gaining the support from the folks we really need it from to make sure the information we get every day is reliable. Because that in itself, to me, is one of the main things that they can really determine how well your operation is running on a day-to-day basis. And I just think that allows you then to pro- forward that information to the right people and use that information in a way that when it's the old garbage in, garbage out thing. Which I remember my first computer class back in school in college when the garbage in, garbage out thing was first kind of came out. It's so true and it's so simple, but I think defining those processes and then documenting those processes, and trying to have the communication with your schools and with your senior management team on how that's going to flow is critical to helping your communication down the line.
I agree with you 100% on this because, and I see this so much working with people in different organizations, in the US especially, and I've also worked with some up in Canada, and that, you know, they want to go to the very end result, right? And it's kind of like when you have your home, right? You're building your home, and you have to start with the foundation of it and build up from that. And this was something that going
Certainly.
through and all the successes that the organizations I was in over the years where we had, because we focused on those core pieces in the beginning, and we were very methodical in process mapping, as you were mentioning, and going out into it. And you're right, I mean, working with all of the different stakeholders, and not only within your department but your whole school district community. It's a lot to go through, and if you can harness that and use the strengths of each one of those and have the buy-in, that just really helps eliminate a lot of these gaps that are out there. So yeah, definitely good points here to bring up. So everyone, we want to go ahead now and again ask you another question if you can, and just, tell us for a few seconds what you see as the stakeholder group that you find the most challenging to communicate with on a daily basis. And we'll pause here for a few seconds. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close this poll, and we see here that right now the leader is internal. Drivers, dispatchers, routers, and supervisors, followed by your schools, your central office staff, and people like that. So again, thanks to everyone who took the time to complete that poll for us.
Benford, I'd point out here that communicating with your parents,
Hmm.
and what the poll indicated that was the most challenging aspect of things, and Bus Planner does have a lot of tools that we'll share some of those today that
Right.
show how you can actually improve your communication with parents, and that's one of the most challenging things in those phone calls. If you can cut those phone calls from coming in, that's one of the things that we always, that's how you measure success in a lot of ways, is if you
Yeah.
don't have phone calls, things are going well. And
Yeah.
so
That's right.
excited about showing some stuff that can help you eliminate some of those phone calls today.
Yep. Yep. I'm right there with you because again, we do, you're right. We've got a lot of those tools and, being able to, use them in the correct manner so that you can work with the different stakeholders that you have, so internally, we've got, the drivers, the monitors, your dispatchers, your routers, right? Zone supervisors if you're in one of the larger operations. And so being able just to communicate internally can be a sheer process in itself. And we haven't even gotten to those stakeholders that are external to your department, but they're internal to the school district itself. We're talking about your schools. So you got your principals, your assistant principals, lead counselors, dean of students if you have them, or
McKinney
whatever
Denton.
title, right? McKinney Vento. So these are going to be people that work in social services, your special needs group. So it's at the central office level. So there's just so many different layers, and then we get to the external, right? When this is where we're going to have those parents we were talking about. And for me, I've always seen the students. That is by far the most important group, stakeholder group that any of us work with. Because let's be honest here, Scott, without the students, we wouldn't even be doing this call right now
Oh,
today. And
absolutely.
that's, and I think a lot in pupil transportation is kind of, in some ways put to the side and takes the back seat to the educational part in the classroom. And it shouldn't be that way because each and every day the students, you know, they start their educational day with a ride on our school buses and they end that way. And so we play a pivotal role in their learning cycle. And it's something that, again, for all of you out here today, be proud of that. Be proud of what you do with them. So, again, how can Bus Planner help, address the mirage of all these daily communication challenges within the department? And so for us, we have these strategies built in. We have seamless processes. Scott, you're mentioning that
Mhm.
student data, so important. And for us, to be able to work with a host of different student information systems, and be able to bring in all sorts of data. We have 100+ fields already mapped, and then there's custom fields. So we can take it down to, those multiple addresses, multiple school enrollments, multiple districts that they may be attending in, right? We can look at various student programs. There's just so many ways that we can help with that. We also want to, work with different imports and exports. So, for mapping, for example, it's so robust now where we can bring in these different, shapefile layers. They can be imported in. We can export them out, to work for planning models. There's just a lot of ways that we can help, these evolving operations as they go through. And then again, that's going to help with that communication piece, right? So that, you can, push that data back, whether it's to that student information system or to, another application, in the planning department to go through that and everything. But there's just a
Remember,
lot that we can do.
yeah, you mentioned the mapping,
Hmm.
and how that translates to me for into communication. If you have your map set up properly, and you've identified places where you don't want kids walking across the street, you have places identified where there are no travel, cul-de-sacs, for
Hmm.
example, where bus drivers are notorious for backing over mailboxes. If you have those things already defined, and Bus
Hmm.
Planner will work with you to set up that map, so that when you have folks assigning bus stops, it takes away some of the um, look, you can make bus stops anywhere you want in Bus Planner, but if you have the framework for how you make your bus stops already predefined, then it makes making those bus stops more consistent. So that when you're communicating out what a bus stop looks like, it's gonna adhere to your policies that you've already established. And how that helps your communication is you're not having to explain to one parent why you made a stop down here versus a stop just down the road is different. So you got a way
Exactly.
to be able to standardize the way Bus Planner helps you is standardizing your map so that you apply the rules and the guidelines and your policies to the mapping, and it automatically helps you. If you decided you needed to make a stop there for a particular reason and you needed to go against a policy for that reason, then Bus Planner will allow you to do that. But it does put a warning up on the screen to let's notify you, hey, you're going against one of your predefined policies. And so to me, that helps in communicating because there's nothing was worse for me than having to make a stop somewhere that I disagreed with having to make that stop in that location. I
Hmm.
know we probably all had to do it. We've had
Oh
an
yeah.
order from a
Hmm.
superintendent or from a school board member
Yep.
who wanted us to make a stop somewhere, and we just disagreed with that because it did not fit with what our strategies were in transportation. And we've all had to do that. And I always just tell our folks, look, we can't maybe we can't control every one of those, but until we change our process, we're going to use our process. So I think Bus Planner helping establish that process and particularly in the map on the mapping side can help you with consistency in the way you actually establish your bus routes and your bus stops, which I think does help with communication.
It does, and and there's, on top of those things you were mentioning, other ways that can help with communication is just within your internal group of stakeholders themselves, and that's another really powerful piece of Bus Planner where it will actually record comments between staff members. Okay. And so you were using that example of, having to put the bus stop where the superintendent or somebody else wanted, right? You're right. We've all had to do it. I had to do it many times, and most like people on here did. But think about how you can, attach the notes, okay, into the student record or to the bus stop itself. And so that way, if, one of the team members looks into the system, whether it's a week later or 6 months later, even a year and a half, 2 years later, they can see that, oh, this Binford here had to put this particular stop in because of reason ABC
Right.
back on September 3rd, 2024 or whatever, right? I'm just using, talking out loud, but that's really powerful. So again, helping strengthen that internal communication is
Absolutely.
just going to progress as you move out to your external stakeholders, Scott.
Absolutely. 100%.
So, with us, we've got a lot of tools in Bus Planners, you already know, Scott, to help people, right? Whether it's our online form management system, okay, our parent app, our delays app, right, where we're able to communicate out, subscription changes, whether they be for students, schools themselves, to bus drivers that, hey, you have an update to your run or your route for today. You need to, get an updated sheet. Think about all the things that, can help with some of those issues. And that's what we want to do with Bus Planner. We want to eliminate those to again make your service delivery operation run much more efficient. That's in there. So,
Yeah, I think the thing, Binford, the thing that pops out on this screen to me, a couple things really.
mhm.
The Bus Planner Dispatch is our newest module that'll be opened up later this month. And for those folks that had on the poll indicated that communicating with parents was a major concern, and I do understand that. Bus Planner Dispatch is going to change the way that happens. It's going to make it so much better. And I'll let you talk about that a little bit more in detail here shortly. I can't not mention Bus Planner Workflow because I'm that process person I talked about earlier. Bus Planner Workflow, we have a customer down in Miami-Dade, Florida, who's using I think 30 plus forms online currently with Bus Planner Workflow, and they have established the process and taken a lot of the manual processing out of their operation and automated a lot of those things through Bus Planner Workflow. And I just think Bus Planner Workflow has the ability to make your operation so much more efficient in the way it operates. Again, you go back to saying you store information inside Bus Planner. You can attach information to a student record or to a bus stop record or to a bus or whatever. That workflow product will allow you to gather that information you need to attach in those locations and do it in an automated fashion. And that is a powerful, powerful, powerful tool. I just think being a process person, I think automating the way you do a lot of that work can make your job so transform the way you operate. I'm a huge fan of Bus Planner workflow, and that whole module. And I know
Mhm.
folks will love the Bus Planner Dispatch because that's what will directly communicate with parents and be able to make changes on the fly and all that. But I had to talk about Bus Planner workflow too because that
Yeah.
one to me is kind of one of those baseline things. If you can get your workflow established, then that workflow through to the communication for the parent just makes it so much more effective.
I remember, having gone through this when I was with Nash County Public Schools in Bus Planner and how we made that transformation. And I tell people all the time that, you know, I knew that Bus Planner was going to change how we did things. What I didn't realize was the metamorphosis that not only our department, but our whole school district community was going to go through. With Bus Planner Web, for example, the ability to, where you didn't have to send out mailings to parents anymore about assignments for their kids. When they would come to open houses, they would be able to access this information, whether they were at the school, whether they were in their own home, right? At work, wherever the case may be, they could access it in real time. It also has the ability to send out, updates. I was talking about those subscriptions so that as your routing team makes assignments to, for individual students, then the system will automatically notify those parents, via email or, text message that, this is going to be the new change. And if they're using our Chipmunk parent app, they can even get it through the app itself, as a notification. So there's just a lot of power. And you're right, workflow, that was tremendous because we got away from the faxes, we got away from the emails. It went to a seamless, online, customized process map system where, students, you mentioned special needs and McKinney-Vento, these could originate from, the specific IEP team members there in special needs that would
Yes.
send us those requests. They didn't have to call. They just sent it, and it would date and timestamp it. It would send them an automated reply letting them know we received it, and then our team would work on it. It had everything: behaviors, special needs categories, services that were needed. Okay, all of these things were in here. Customized work plans, if they had behavior issues, strategies to mitigate some of those things that would come up. So that way your drivers and your monitors in the field would be able to see that, right? And if you have the Turns app, they'll be able to access all this data just by clicking on the individual student at the stop. So there's so much you can do there. That's out there. And dispatch, that one is one that, again, where we started this conversation talking about the driver shortage and how, school systems are fighting these challenges right now today. Think about this. When you are already down, 20, 25, even 30% vacancies, you're drinking from a fire hose, you can't deal with it. And then somebody calls out and it's
Happens.
5 minutes before they're supposed to leave in the morning. You don't have anybody to call to get out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. So what do? With this dispatch model, teams in these organizations are literally going to be able to take the absent drivers' runs for that morning or even the afternoon, whichever the case may be, and they'll be able to break them up, and they will systematically be able to move individual stops and the students assigned to those from the absent driver's bus over to another bus that's in the vicinity. Maybe it's not just one bus. Maybe they have to break the run up 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways. They'll be able to do this all in a matter of seconds. Now let that soak in for a minute. And once you do that, then the system will then be able to go out and send out those notices, updating again the parents, letting them know now your stop is going to be changed, right? From the current time to the new time. You'll also be able to let your schools know. So they'll be aware that instead of the bus driver who's absent, now the kids are going to be coming in on buses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll also be able to send that out through our Turns app to the drivers who have just picked up those stops to where they'll be able to do it. This is so powerful, and it's going to eliminate so many of these communication issues that people are struggling with right now today. So
But
it's going to
I'm
be a
sitting there
game changer.
I'm having a flashback to being in
Hmm.
the office with my operations folks just down the hall, and all of those folks having to go out and drive a bus that day because it was so
Hmm.
short,
Right.
and then them getting call outs,
Hmm.
at the last minute, and they're I need to go leave to go get on a bus, but yet I've got another call I got to deal with. And I got to split this one up somehow or other, and to have something like this so they could do it that quickly, it doesn't delay them from driving the bus that afternoon, so they're more on schedule. And
Right.
the automated communications with your parents and your schools and your other drivers to be able to get that information out quickly, it is just so paramount. And I can remember so
Hmm.
many days where we had our operations team. Every single person was having to drive that afternoon, and so to be able to make this a lot easier for them, I think just transforms their lives. I mean, I'll go out on a limb a little bit here, Binford, and say this. I always used to tell my staff our goal in transportation, which we never really reached, was to have people work 8 hours a day.
Hmm.
Because you know how transportation is, and everybody on this call knows the same thing. That seems like a pipe dream. Well, I can tell you that if you employ the tools that BusPlanner has, you do that with fidelity, and you do that, and it ingrains into your daily operation, it will take you less time to do your work than what it currently takes you. I think you
Oh
could
yeah.
probably ask our current BusPlanner customers; they
Yeah.
tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
So my goal would be to have people that are working 12-hour days to work less than that. Now, can you ever get to 8? I don't know. It depends on how you're set up and how much
Right.
work you're doing and all that. But wouldn't
Right.
it be great if you could shave time off your existing schedule to where you were more efficient at your work and didn't have to spend evenings at home doing things that you could get done in a much more efficient way? And so
Oh
I
yeah.
go out on a
Most
limb
definitely.
and say I believe that this software can help you do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you're right. And people that have gone over to it, I mean, I don't know a single operation that has not seen a positive return on investment. You know, we have, talking about people having to work from home. I mean, I have talked to route supervisors before that have told me that they used to have to not go home every now and then and work in routing to update the system every night at dinner,
Right.
but they had to do it every single night. That's a problem, and they don't have to do that anymore with Bus Planner, right? And so again, it's doing a lot of this work, and it's taken away because people are getting pulled. They're having to drive buses. It's not an every now and then, it's becoming a daily occurrence. And
Yep.
so again, it's just a lot. But listen, everyone out there, again, we want to hear from you because I've already told you, he's told you, we're really excited about, some of the new tools we've got, especially with this dispatch tool. But want to know from you. I mean, does having access to route splitting on a daily basis, does that pose communication challenges for your team right now today? Okay. So again, if you can go ahead and take a few minutes just to answer this poll, or a few seconds, I should say, and we'll pause here for about 15,
Of
20
course.
seconds. Thanks.
Yeah, I think this was one of those more obvious things that we kind of knew the answer going into this one, Binford.
We did. We did. But we want to see. We want to see what they got to say, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, we still have some votes coming in. Go ahead and answer those for us.
I'm sorry, y'all. I've had a little bit of a cold, and so I have to cough every once in a while. I apologize for having to do that.
You are a-okay, sir. All right, everyone. So, yep, it's what we thought, Scott. So right now, everyone voting, 79% out there say that yes, um, having access to route splitting, is posing a communication challenge for their team, hands down. So that's that right there. That's what the listeners have told us today. So, again, being able to, to work through it. And again, this is some of that stuff that we were talking about with dispatch, right? Being able to, reassign, those routes, and everything I'm telling you, that this application is going to do, it's going to be completely independent of your live routing database, right? So for those of you sitting out there listening going, oh man, they're going to mess my routes up, my stops, my runs, everything's going to be messed up. The answer is no, not at all. We're going to completely run it parallel. Your routing team is going to still be able to do that work, and then when the day is over, then we're going to scrub the system, and it's going to revert back to that live run route matrix model for the next day. So don't worry about that at all. But
So,
being able to again maximize that coverage and being able to provide those detailed reports. So
so
yes,
Binford, you
Scott.
could, if you wanted to, schedule these changes for a period of time. So if you knew a person had the flu, for example, going to be out for the week, and you wanted to break the routes up and save those changes for those 4 or 5 days, and then it revert back after that time frame, you could do that. Correct?
Most definitely. Yeah, and yeah, that's a really good point, and be able to do that. And then the other part of it that I neglected to mention earlier was that your dispatch team or whoever's going to be running this application in your operator, they'll actually be able to see the buses. So they'll see the ones coming in. They'll know who's running on time. They'll know who's running early, who's running late, and which is going to be a great visual aspect, and then being able to to keep up with again those operational components. And then we're going to get it to where when certain thresholds are put in, again, we know everybody's tolerance is a little bit different, so you would be able to set those up to again where that bus planner alerts and notification system that could then engage, and it could send out those updates for, ones that are running late or runs that are running early, and let's say you set the threshold at 10 minutes either way or 15, whatever, right? And then so it'd be able to do that. And again, it's keeping that communication going.
If I'm having another flashback here. I know there are different locations that have buses parked in a bus yard,
Mm-hmm.
and you can open the door and look out and see which one has not left. Right, we've had to do that many years ago. That's the way we had to do it. Right. There are
Right.
also locations where there is no personnel there other than the buses parked on a school campus, and so
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't necessarily know if a driver didn't call because they had an emergency and couldn't call. You wouldn't know that bus had not left yet. And so part of what we will be offering through this dispatch module is that dashboard Binford was talking about. You'll be able to know now if those buses have been started and are warming up and are getting ready to leave on time. You'll know that just through looking at your dashboard. And that's going to be a significantly powerful thing so that you can get started on following up on which bus is not on schedule and what are you going to do to cover it and those kind of things. So to have that information at your fingertips versus really not knowing and having to rely on somebody calling you to tell you. And maybe you get that first call from a parent saying the bus is late in the morning and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know the bus hadn't left yet. I mean,
Right.
unfortunately, those kind of things are things that are real life, and trying to find ways to address those has just been until now. I mean, it's actually been much more challenging. But I think this dispatch module can pave the way to making this a much easier way to track things and have an impact on that.
Yeah, most definitely. And and like you said, everybody's a little bit different. So whether they have those centralized yards where they park, or they have schools they park, or you mentioned earlier about people parking at home, right? That's how it was when you and I first started driving many years ago.
I won't
But
talk about how
yeah,
many years it was.
I'm not going to talk either. So, but yeah, but I think for again, that's the how we have designed everything in Bus Planner over the years to be able to adapt to any one organization, right? So for those that have all these different variations, our system will still be able to work for you, and that's the way that we've always wanted it to be. We don't want pupil transportation operations to adapt to Bus Planner. We want Bus Planner to adapt to each and every
Absolutely.
individual Bus Planner, and that's another great thing about it that I loved back in the beginning and still love today. So, um, I think also, Scott, we've been talking about a lot of this, right? And so, again, for the communication in that real time, there's going to be another vital piece in all this, right? And that's having that GPS, those telematics that are integrated into the system. And that's another way that Bus Planner is different because, and with our ecosystem, we are able to digest the information that's already there through the routing, the information coming in from the GPS on the vehicles, and then be able to then use the different protocols, the AI processes and all, to be able to then send out those communications. Because again, we know that the planned world and the real world aren't always going to be able to match up. And so, you know, being able to talk through some of those, how they can interact, with that GPS, I think is really important, right? And again, I think this is going to depend on each location, right? Because when you were doing this, right, you had a set of things that were important to you in a GPS system. When I was doing it, I had a list of things that were important. So again, it's going to be a little different for each one, but I think it's a lot of value that we need to bring to the table here in this conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you're in the market for GPS, you're thinking about changing vendors or whatever. I would always recommend having doing a pilot with the vendor.
Hmm.
That is one of the best ways to figure out if it's going to provide the data that you need. And so I think most people probably already know that, but I would highly recommend that people do a pilot with a couple, 3 units, just to make sure that the data is coming across that you need, because not all GPS vendors are created equal. And
Mhm.
data provided can vary from one vendor to another, and the tools they offer can vary from one vendor to another. So you want to make sure you ask a lot of questions through that process to get the tool that you really need that's going to work for you.
Right. I mean, when I started out doing the live GPS integration and routing, again, I'm kind of showing my age here, how long I've been doing this, but it was back when it was in the infancy. I remember Nash was one of the first 10 or 12 districts in the entire country that implemented a live GPS system back in the mid 2000s, right? We Parent apps were not even heard of back then, right?
Yeah,
But what was really important to us was again being able to take that the real world and infuse it into the routing. And so I recall having that map calibration that was so important, and it's still very important today because again, every student has a stop assignment, and that stop assignment has what? A published time. So this is what you're
yeah,
giving out to again all your different stakeholders through communication. And what you don't want to have happen is where the planned stop time doesn't actually translate to what the vehicle is actually doing every day. And so using our speed calibration, you're actually able to calibrate your routing map street segment by street segment in each direction to coordinate with what the vehicles, right, and your entire fleet are doing for each one of those roads that they travel. And
and
then
that's
after
both
you
morning
do
and
that,
afternoon, right?
yes, sir, you can do it morning, afternoon. You can pick certain times throughout a day block. You can pick certain days of the week. There is, again, it's just like what you were talking about earlier with students, walking to stops and how we can make that so special. We can do the same thing here with the speed tuner. We can specialize it for each person's individual community situation. So it's just, yeah, there's a lot to it, but again, I hope that this has been valuable, our conversation today with everyone. We've got about 10, 11 minutes left before the hour's up. We know everyone's very busy out there. So, we wanted to go ahead and again stop talking and thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. Hope that we've been able to share some of the strategies we've used over the years to make our operations more successful and how we would like to help you in your operations moving forward. Again, I want to thank all of you that have joined us today to take time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for the service you do for the school children, wherever you are in North America. It's, Scott said at the beginning, and if, for those of us that are committed to the industry and have been for the years, I tell people, you cut me, I'm not going to bleed red, I'm going to bleed yellow. And that's just how much I care about this. He cares about it. And so we want to thank you for the service that you're doing for
Absolutely.
those children. Those of you that are customers of BusPlanner, thank you for entrusting us to be your partner for your total transportation management system. It means a lot to us, and we never will take that for granted. And for those of you that are just maybe got more questions, maybe want to learn more about it, give us a call. We'd love to sit down and talk to you. That's again, we just want to help one school district at a time out there.
Hey, we're
So
trying to grow our family, pal, and
that's right.
we'll take as many
That's
family
right.
members as we can get, and
That's
we'll treat you like family when we get you too.
that's right. We sure will. That never will change. So everyone, have a great afternoon, and thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next call. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.